Prologue. Before there was heartbreak, before anyone was lost, before two families were torn apart forever, this is where the story truly begins. Long before the hatred, Will Martin and Greg Colleen were best friends. They grew up together, laughed together, and believed nothing could ever separate them. But one day, Will left Greg behind during one of the hardest moments of Greg's life. Greg never understood why, and Will never came back to explain. As the years passed, their friendship turned into bitterness. Eventually, the two men built families of their own, but they never let go of the past. Their children were raised with one simple rule: stay away from the other family. Neither family ever told their children the real reason for the feud. All they knew was that the Martins and the Collins were enemies, but fate had different plans. When two teenagers from opposite families unexpectedly meet, they begin to question everything they have been taught. As their friendship grows, old secrets begin to surface, and both families are forced to face a past they have tried to bury. This is the story of Virgil Martin and Dancilla Colleen. Their journey begins here. The Martin family. Virgil M. Martin, age 19, eldest son Virgil is the oldest of the Martin children. He spends most of his time working and singing to help pay the family's bills and provide for his younger siblings. He carries a heavy responsibility on his shoulders, but always puts his family first. Trey Martin, age 15, second oldest. Trey is stubborn, rebellious, and easily angered. He often argues with his parents and especially dislikes his younger brother, Christopher. Mike W. Martin, age 13, middle child. Mike is calm, intelligent, and usually stays out of family conflicts. He often acts as the peacemaker among his siblings. Elizabeth E. Martin, age 6, second youngest. Elizabeth is kind, cheerful, and full of curiosity. She loves spending time with her family and always tries to make people smile. Christopher E. Martin, age 5, youngest child. Christopher is the youngest member of the Martin family. He is innocent, playful, and too young to understand the hatred between the two families. William O. Martin, age 48, father. William is the father of the Martin family. Although he rarely speaks about it, he refuses to forgive Greg Colleen for what happened years ago. He strictly forbids his children from interacting with the Collins. Rosalie M. Martin, age 33, stepmother. Rosalie is a caring and loving mother who tries to keep peace in her home. She wishes the feud between the families would end, but knows it isn't that simple. The Colleen family. Greg Colleen, father. Greg was once Will Martin's closest friend. After Will abandoned him years ago, Greg's pain slowly turned into resentment. He has never forgiven Will and teaches his family to stay away from the Martins. Dancilla Colleen. Dancilla is one of the main characters. She is kind, compassionate, and curious about the world around her. Unlike the adults, she believes there is more to the story than simple hatred. Parker Colleen, a member of the Colleen family, who is loyal to those he loves. Noha Colleen, a caring member of the Colleen family, who often tries to avoid conflict. Mansion Colleen, a protective member of the family, who stands by his relatives no matter what. Emily Colleen, a warm-hearted member of the Colleen family, who hopes the fighting between the families will someday come to an end. Side characters: Tyre Smith, April Heather, Jalen Jason, Karen Cleaning Peel, Bethany Anthem, Deborah Armstrong, Dawina Callerson. Simon Heathen, Mark Plant. Main characters: Virgil M. Martin, a hardworking young man whose love for his family drives him to sacrifice everything for them. He never expected his life to change because of someone from the family he was taught to hate. Dancilla Colleen. A compassionate and determined young woman who refuses to let old hatred define her future. Her chance meeting with Virgil will change both of their lives forever. Chapter 1. Mike jumped forward, boo, smack. Christopher spun around and slapped the absolute shit out of Mike before the poor kid even had time to react. Mike stumbled backward, holding his cheek. What the fuck? Virgil burst into laughter. He laughed so hard he had to grab the wall to keep from falling over. Christopher crossed his arms. You know I ain't scared of you, right, dum-dum? Mike rubbed his face. You could have just fucking said that instead of smacking the shit out of me. Christopher shrugged. Feel like it. Virgil wiped tears from his eyes from laughing so hard. Well, now you know, he pointed at Mike. You'll think twice before trying to scare Christopher again, huh? Mike narrowed his eyes. How long have you been standing there? Virgil smirked. Long enough to watch our 5-year-old little brother beat your ass. Mike scoffed. Lucky I wasn't ready. Virgil laughed again. Nah, you're just weak. Mike rolled his eyes. Oh yeah? Virgil folded his arms. Yeah, Mike grinned. I want to see your ass scare somebody. Virgil raised an eyebrow. Bet. Who? Mike didn't hesitate. Dad. Virgil smiled. Too easy. Christopher shook his head. Retards. Virgil walked into the kitchen where William was making breakfast. William looked over and smiled. Hey son. Morning, Dad. What are you up to? Virgil shrugged. Not much. William turned toward the counter. His fresh toast and hot coffee were waiting for him. He reached for them. Virgil reached them first. He picked up both and slowly looked back at his father with the biggest grin on his face. William's eyes widened. Virgil raised an eyebrow. What? William pointed at the food. Do it. Or what? I swear to God. Virgil smiled even wider. William sighed. I'll do anything. Virgil laughed. Anything? Please. William held his hands together. Please don't. Virgil looked at the toast, then the coffee, then back at William, without another word. He poured the entire cup of coffee onto the toast. The bread instantly became a soggy mess. William froze. His soul left his body. No. Virgil couldn't stop laughing. William slowly looked up. He no longer my favorite child. Virgil pointed toward the hallway. Mike told me to. William blinked. Oh, he nodded. You're still my favorite. Then he yelled Mike. Mike walked into the kitchen. Yeah, William pointed at him. Congratulations. Mike looked confused. For what? You're no longer my second favorite. Mike stared. When the fuck was I ever your favorite? Virgil laughed. Since you were born. Mike looked at William. He got a weird way of showing it. Before William could answer, Trey walked into the kitchen. What about me? Virgil looked at him. Fourth. Trey frowned. Who's before me? Without missing a beat, Virgil, Mike, and William all answered together. Elizabeth. Trey blinked. Seriously, he looked around the room. So, Christopher's last. Virgil nodded. Yep. Christopher smiled proudly. I don't care. Trey groaned. This family sucks. He turned around and stormed out of the kitchen. The second he disappeared, Mike looked at Virgil. So, when are we gonna tell him he's actually last? Virgil shook his head immediately. Never. Why? Virgil leaned against the counter. Because he's happy thinking about Christopher's last. He smiled. Leave him alone. Mike laughed. Fair enough. Okay, big bro. A few minutes later. Trey walked into the living room where Rosalie was folding laundry. Hey, Mom, she smiled. Yeah, sweetheart, Trey crossed his arms. Who's your favorite kid? Rosalie looked up just as Virgil walked into the room. Their eyes met. Virgil immediately knew Trey had been asking questions. Rosalie tried not to laugh. Oh no, Trey kept going. Who's your second favorite? Third, fourth, and who's last? Rosalie smiled sweetly. My favorite, she pointed at Virgil. Virgil. My second favorite is Mike. My third is Christopher. My fourth is Elizabeth. She looked directly at Trey, and last, is you. Trey's jaw dropped. What? He turned around and silently walked away. The second he disappeared around the corner, Virgil looked at Rosalie. How the fuck am I your favorite? Rosalie laughed. Not. Virgil blinked. What? I just wanted him to be sad. Virgil burst out laughing. You are evil. Rosalie shrugged. So? Virgil grinned. So? Who's actually your favorite? Rosalie smiled. Trey. Virgil laughed even harder. You hear that, Trey? From somewhere down the hallway? Yep. Mike suddenly walked into the room. He looked at Rosalie. Your favorites are Trey, Elizabeth, Christopher, me. He pointed at Virgil. And then this dumbass. Rosalie laughed. I wasn't gonna tell him that. Mike shrugged. I did. Virgil looked at him. You really wake up every morning and choose violence, don't you? Mike grinned. Every damn day. Virgil couldn't stop laughing until he looked at Christopher. A split second. Christopher wasn't standing in front of him anymore. He saw Mari. Her tiny hand was wrapped around one of his fingers as she smiled up at him. Virgie, look, I can tie my shoes. He remembered kneeling beside her. Good job, princess. She threw herself into his arms. You'll always protect me, right? Virgil smiled always. Then bang, purple eyes, black veins, blood everywhere. Mari's little body fell backward. Virgil, he dropped to his knees. No, he crawled toward her. No. No, no. She wasn't moving. He cradled her against his chest while screaming so loudly his throat felt like it ripped apart. Behind him, a tree burst from the ground and shot straight through the man's stomach. Virgil never even realized he had done it. He only held Mari tighter. Please. Wake up. Please. Someone grabbed his shoulder. Virgil, he blinked. Christopher was standing in front of him. Big bro, Virgil looked around the room, the kitchen, Mike. Christopher, dad, no blood, no gun, no Mari. He swallowed the lump in his throat. Okay, even though he knew he wasn't. The morning air was cool as Virgil and William walked toward the school. Neither of them said much. Christopher had stayed home with Rosalie and the others. For a while, the only sound was their footsteps on the sidewalk. Then, a little girl chased a red ball into the street. Virgil froze. His heart slammed against his chest. No, the world around him disappeared. Flashback, Daddy, look. Marcy giggled as she skipped ahead of William and Virgil. Will laughed. Get too far ahead, sweetheart. I'm just looking. Virgil smiled. Stay where we can see you, okay? Marcy turned around and gave him a thumbs up. Okay, big bro. Virgil followed William into the building where Will worked. I'll be right back, Virgil said. I gotta use the bathroom. Will nodded. Take forever. Virgil laughed. I won't. A few minutes later, he stepped back into the hallway. Marcy, no answer. He looked toward the front door. It was open. His stomach dropped. No. He sprinted outside. There she was standing in the middle of the road. A black Jeep came flying around the corner. Virgil's eyes widened. Marcy, she looked up. Huh? Virgil ran as fast as he could. I can't lose you, please. Get out of the fucking street. Will heard him scream. His heart stopped. He ran outside. Marcy. The tires screamed across the pavement. Screech. Bang. Everything went silent. Marcy's little body flew through the air before crashing onto the pavement. No. Virgil collapsed beside her. His hands shook as he reached for her. Blood covered his fingers. No, no. Will slowly walked over. His legs gave out. He dropped beside his children. Virgil looked up at him, tears pouring down his face. I wasn't fast enough. I tried to save her. Will didn't say anything. He simply pulled Virgil into his arms. The young man broke. Screams echoed through the empty street. Virgil. A familiar voice pulled him back. He blinked. William was standing beside him. The little girl had already been pulled safely back onto the sidewalk by her mother. She was laughing, completely unharmed. William looked at his son. You had another one? It wasn't a question. Virgil nodded silently. William sighed. I know what you saw. Virgil looked away. I should have been faster. William stopped walking. He grabbed Virgil's shoulder. Listen to me. Virgil looked up. That wasn't your fault. It never was. Virgil's eyes filled with tears. It feels like it was. William pulled him into a hug right there on the sidewalk. You've spent years blaming yourself, but you were just a kid. You hear me? Virgil buried his face against his father's shoulder. I miss them, Dad. William closed his eyes. I know. So do I. They stood there for a long moment before continuing toward the school. Neither of them noticed that the school building was now just across the street. Neither of them knew that today would be the day Virgil's life would change forever. Virgil stepped through the front doors of the school. The noise hit him immediately. Students laughing, lockers slamming, teachers yelling over the crowd. Everyone looked normal. Everyone looked happy, but Virgil never felt normal anymore. He tightened his grip on his backpack strap and looked around. This place was huge. The hall stretched farther than he expected, and somewhere deeper inside the building, he heard the sound of water. A pool. Virgil stopped walking. His heart dropped. No, he slowly turned his head. Through the glass doors near the gym, he saw it. A large swimming pool, blue water, ripples moving across the surface. For everyone else, it was just a pool. For Virgil, it was a grave. His breathing became uneven. The hallway disappeared. The voices disappeared. All he could hear was water. Come on, Marco. Virgil laughed as he walked beside his little brother. You don't even know how to swim yet. Marco smiled. I can learn. William shook his head while laughing. Someone better keep an eye on him. Marilyn smiled. Virgil always does. Those words hurt now, because he remembered. He remembered always being the protector, the one who was supposed to save everyone. The sun was shining. Marcy was laughing. Marilyn and Will were eating ice cream. Virgil looked over. Marco was near the pool too close. Marco, the little boy turned around. I want to swim. Virgil froze. Wait. Marco stepped forward and disappeared. The smile left Virgil's face. Marco, he dropped his ice cream. He didn't think, he didn't breathe, he just jumped. The water swallowed him. His clothes became heavy, his lungs burned, but he didn't care. He had to get his brother. He had to. Marco was sinking lower, lower, lower. Virgil kicked as hard as he could. Come on, please, don't do this. Marco's eyes were closed. His lips were turning purple. Virgil reached out. Their hands touched. Then Marco's body went still. Virgil's heart shattered. No, 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 no. He grabbed him. He pulled him toward the surface. When they broke through the water, Virgil screamed. Help! William ran toward them. Marilyn followed behind him. The second they saw Marco in Virgil's arms, they knew. William's face went pale. No, Marilyn covered her mouth. My baby. Virgil held Marco against his chest. His whole body shook. I'm sorry. So sorry. I was supposed to save him. William grabbed Virgil and held him. You couldn't have known. Virgil cried harder. I should have been faster. Hey. A voice snapped him back. Virgil blinked. The pool was still there. The hallway was still there. Students were still walking around, but his hands were shaking. Are you okay? Virgil looked down. He realized he had been standing there frozen. His eyes burned. Yeah, but he wasn't, not even close. He took a deep breath and looked away from the pool. He whispered quietly to himself. I won't lose anyone else. A small tear slipped down his cheek. He quickly wiped it away before anyone noticed. Then he continued walking, not knowing that this school, this place full of strangers, would soon become the place where his life changed forever. After leaving the gym hallway, Virgil finally found his way toward the main office. A woman behind the desk smiled at him. Are you Virgil Martin? Virgil nodded. Yes, ma'am. She handed him a folder. Welcome to the school. Your teachers are expecting you. Virgil thanked her and followed the hallway toward his first class. The school was strange. Everyone here was starting a normal day, laughing, talking, worrying about homework. They didn't know what it felt like to wake up and realize the people you loved were gone. Virgil stopped outside his first classroom. He took a deep breath. Then he knocked. A woman opened the door. Ah, you must be our new student. Virgil froze for a second. He couldn't move. The teacher had the same gentle smile, the same warm eyes, the same kind expression. She looked so much like Mom. The name almost escaped his lips. The teacher tilted her head. Are you all right? Virgil blinked. He wasn't in the classroom anymore. He was home. Flashback: the house was quiet. Too quiet. Virgil remembered walking down the hallway. Mom, no answer. Marilyn, still nothing. His stomach twisted. Something felt wrong, then he heard it. A loud crash. His heart dropped. He ran. Mom. He reached the room and froze. Someone had broken into their home. The person who had taken everything from him was standing there. Virgil remembered the fear, the anger, the helpless feeling of being too late. No, he ran forward, but he couldn't stop it. He couldn't change what happened. His mother was gone. The woman who had held him when he cried. The woman who told him everything would be okay. The woman who promised she would always be there. Gone. Virgil remembered falling beside her. Mom, his voice broke. Please, wake up. He waited. He begged. But the silence answered him. Then he remembered his father running into the room. William's face changed the second he saw his wife. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He just broke. William pulled Virgil into his arms. SHHHHH, I'm here, son. I'm here. Virgil cried into his father's chest. I lost her. William held him tighter. I know, Virgil. The teacher's voice pulled him back. He looked around. The classroom was full of students. No broken house. No memories, no blood, just a teacher standing in front of him. I'm sorry, Virgil whispered. The teacher smiled softly. It's okay. First days can be overwhelming. Virgil looked at her. For a moment he wanted to tell her everything about Mari, about Marco, about Marcy, about Marilyn, about all the people he couldn't save, but he couldn't. He just nodded. Thank you. The teacher stepped aside. Come in. Everyone, this is Virgil Martin. He'll be joining us. Virgil walked into the classroom. Every step felt heavy, but he kept moving, because that was what he had always done. He survived, he was protected, and he carried the memories of the people he lost, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. Chapter 2, The Girl from the Colleen Family. Virgil sat quietly in the back of the classroom. He always chose the back. It was easier. From there he could see everyone, he could hear everything, and if something went wrong, he could react. The teacher continued explaining the lesson, but Virgil barely heard a word. His mind was somewhere else. Memories of his old family, memories of the people he couldn't save. He looked down at his notebook. Instead of taking notes, he was drawing, a small flower, then another, then another. Drawing was the only thing that ever made the noise in his head quiet down. The new kid, right? Virgil looked up. A girl was standing beside his desk. She had a curious look on her face. Yeah, she smiled. I'm guessing you're Virgil Martin. Virgil nodded. That's me. The girl opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, the classroom door opened. A few students turned around. A group of girls walked in. One of them caught Virgil's attention, not because she was loud, not because she was trying to get attention, because she looked nervous. She looked around the room like she was searching for something. Her eyes landed on him for a moment. Everything went quiet. Virgil didn't know who she was. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her family. He didn't know that the girl standing across the room was a Colleen. And she didn't know that the boy she was looking at was a Martin. Two families. Two names, two sides of a war they never started. The girl quickly looked away. Hey. Dinsilla, one of her friends whispered. You okay? Dinsilla nodded quickly. Yeah, but she wasn't. She had heard about the new student. Everyone had Virgil Martin, the singer, the artist, the boy from the family everyone was supposed to hate, but when she looked at him, he didn't seem like the monster her family described. He just looked tired, like he was carrying something heavy. Later that day, the hallway was packed. Students rushed to their next classes. Virgil walked alone, holding his books. He wasn't paying attention. He was too busy looking at the drawings in his notebook. Then bump. Someone crashed into him. Books flew everywhere. I'm so sorry. Virgil immediately looked down. The girl from earlier was kneeling on the floor picking up her papers. It's okay. He bent down to help. Their hands reached for the same notebook. They both stopped. Virgil looked at her. She looked at him. Dinsilla. A small silence passed. Virgil, she smiled. I know. He raised an eyebrow. You do, she laughed nervously. Everyone knows. Virgil looked away. That doesn't sound like a good thing. Dinsilla noticed the sadness in his voice. No, she shook her head. I don't mean it like that. Virgil picked up the last paper. People usually know my name because of my family. Dinsilla became quiet because she understood. She knew exactly what he meant. My family is the same. Virgil looked at her. Really? She nodded. People judge me before they even know me. For some reason, that sentence stayed with him because he knew that feeling. The hallway bell rang. Students started moving again. Dinsilla grabbed her books. I guess I'll see you around. Virgil nodded. Yeah, she walked away. Virgil watched her leave. He didn't know why, but something about her felt different. She wasn't like the people who stared at him. She wasn't like the people who whispered. She looked at him like he was just Virgil, not a Martin, not a mistake, not someone carrying a past he couldn't escape, just Virgil. Across the hallway, Dinsilla looked back. She didn't understand it either. She was supposed to hate him. Her family told her to. His family probably told him the same. But something felt wrong about that, because the person standing in front of her didn't feel like an enemy. He felt like someone who needed a friend, and neither of them knew that one conversation would change both families forever. The rest of the school day passed quicker than Virgil expected. Every class introduced something new. Math wasn't too difficult. English was mostly reading and writing. Civics and government focused on how the country's laws worked. Biochemistry made his head hurt. Global awareness talked about different cultures and countries around the world. Lunch was loud, but Virgil mostly listened while the other students talked. Advisory was quiet. Health, CPR, and computer science were actually interesting. Gym was easy. Art quickly became his favorite class. His teacher smiled as she looked at one of his sketches. "You got real talent, Virgil." He smiled politely. "Thank you." Study hall gave him time to draw instead of homework. He drew the faces of the people he missed. Mari, Marco, Marcy, Marilyn. He closed the notebook before anyone could see, finally. The last bell rang, ring, students flooded into the hallways. Some laughed, some sprinted for the exits, others complained about homework. Virgil adjusted his backpack and started walking toward the front doors. As he stepped outside, he noticed someone standing across the street, an elderly woman. She wore a long black coat and leaned on an old wooden cane. Her eyes never left him. Virgil frowned. "Do I know her?" The woman smiled, a smile that sent chills down his spine before he could think about it any longer. "Virgil," he turned. It was Dinsilla. She jogged over with a smile. "You survived your first day," Virgil chuckled. "Barely. I'm glad you like the school." "It's different," she laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." Before either of them could say another word, a black van screeched to a stop beside the curb. The side door slammed open. "What the?" Two people wearing black masks jumped out. One grabbed Virgil from behind, the other shoved Dinsilla backward. She stumbled onto the sidewalk. Virgil struggled. "Let me go." He drove his elbow into one of the kidnappers. The man grunted. Another grabbed Virgil's arms. He fought with everything he had. "Get the fuck off me." Students screamed. Teachers started running outside. One of the masked people pulled out a syringe. Virgil's eyes widened. No, the needle pierced his neck. Within seconds, his body became heavy, his vision blurred. Dinsilla. His knees buckled. The kidnappers caught him before he hit the ground. No, Dinsilla ran toward them. "Leave him alone." One of the kidnappers slammed the van door shut. The tires squealed. The van sped away. Dinsilla stood frozen in the middle of the parking lot. Virgil? Tears filled her eyes. Without thinking, she ran home. The Colleen house. Dinsilla burst through the front door. "Dad, Mom." Her parents looked up from the living room. Greg frowned. "What's wrong?" "They took him." Greg sighed. "Who? The new student?" "Virgil Martin. He got kidnapped right in front of me." Greg's expression changed, not to be concerned to annoyance. "So?" Dinsilla stared at him. "What?" Greg folded his arms. "He's Martin. It isn't our problem." Dinsilla couldn't believe what she had just heard. "Dad, someone kidnapped him." Greg looked away. "I don't care. If the Martins can't protect their own family, that's on them." Dinsilla's voice shook. "How can you say that? He's just a kid." Greg stood. "Dinsilla, drop it. We are not getting involved with the Martins." Ever, silence filled the room. Dinsilla looked at her parents. Neither of them moved. Neither of them picked up the phone. Neither of them cared. A tear rolled down her cheek. "You're wrong." She turned and ran upstairs, slamming her bedroom door for the first time in her life. She questioned everything her family had taught her. Virgil slowly opened his eyes. His wrists and ankles were strapped to a cold metal table. His head pounded. Where? The room smelled like chemicals. Glass tubes lined the walls. Machines hummed softly. Footsteps echoed behind him. An elderly woman stepped into the light. She smiled. "My sweet grandson." Virgil's blood ran cold. "Grandma," she chuckled. Grown into the perfect specimen. Virgil struggled against the restraints. "What the fuck do you want?" The old woman picked up a syringe filled with glowing purple liquid. Waited a very long time for this." She smiled wider. "You are going to help me finish my experiments, whether you survive them or not." Virgil stared at her, fear, confusion, anger, all at once. The woman gently ran a hand through his hair. "Don't worry. This won't hurt for very long." She raised the syringe. Virgil pulled against the restraints with everything he had. The chains rattled violently. The room echoed with one desperate scream. "Let me the fuck go." Chapter 3, The Experiment. Darkness, that was the first thing Virgil noticed. The second was the cold. He slowly opened his eyes. The room was made of gray concrete. Thick metal pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping water every few seconds. Drip, drip, drip. His wrists and ankles were locked to a steel table with heavy restraints. He pulled. Nothing. The metal didn't even budge. "Hello?" he called, his voice barely above a whisper. No answer. Only silence. A heavy steel door creaked open. An elderly woman walked inside, dressed in a spotless white lab coat. Her silver hair was tied back neatly, and a calm smile rested on her face. To anyone else, she looked harmless. To Virgil, she was a nightmare. "Grandma," she smiled. "My grandson. I was beginning to think you wouldn't wake up." Virgil glared at her. "What the fuck do you want?" She walked around the table, writing notes on a clipboard. "I want to see what you become. I've heard stories. The boy who protects everyone. Boy who survived. The boy with abilities no one can explain." Virgil pulled against the restraints again. "I'm not helping you." She didn't even look up. "Oh, you already are." A machine hummed to life beside him. Lights flickered across the room. "What the hell is that?" "Progress," she answered. She adjusted a dial. "We're going to learn how your body responds." Virgil's breathing quickened. "You've lost your damn mind." She smiled. "So your father used to say." She pressed a button. A low vibration ran through the table. Virgil clenched his jaw. He refused to make a sound. His grandmother watched him carefully, still trying to be brave. Another button. The machine's humming grew louder. Virgil squeezed his eyes shut. His muscles tensed involuntarily. His breathing became uneven. He bit the inside of his cheek to stop himself from crying out. She wrote something on her clipboard. "Pain tolerance. Remarkably high." Virgil forced a laugh. "You're still fucking crazy." She ignored the insult. Instead, she stepped closer. "You know why you're special?" Virgil remained silent. "Because grief changes people. You've lost so much." She leaned down. "And every time someone you loved died, you changed." Virgil's heart pounded. "Don't. But I find that fascinating." I said. His voice shook. "Don't." She pressed another switch. The lights above him flashed. His heartbeat echoed through the monitors. Images appeared on nearby screens. Marco, Marcy, Marilyn, old family photographs. Virgil stared in horror. No, his grandmother watched him closely, recognition confirmed, emotional response increasing. Stop it. She clicked to another image, Mari smiling, Marco laughing, Marcy holding Virgil's hand, Marilyn hugging him, his breathing became ragged, tears filled his eyes. Please, she wrote another note. Subject exhibits severe trauma when exposed to family memories. Virgil finally snapped they had names, his voice echoed through the room. They weren't experiments. They were my family. They loved me. His grandmother remained expressionless. And now they're dead. Silence, Virgil looked away, a tear rolled down his cheek. I know. For the first time his voice sounded small. I know. She turned off the screens, the room became quiet again. Interesting. Virgil glared at her. I hate you. She paused at the doorway. I know. And yet, she looked back at him. He's still exactly where I wanted you. The heavy door slammed shut. Clang, Virgil was alone again, his breathing slowly steadied. He stared at the ceiling. I'll get out. His voice was barely audible. I don't care how long it takes. I'll get out. He closed his eyes. In the silence, he imagined Mari laughing, Marco asking him to play, Marcy running ahead, Marilyn telling him everything would be okay. He held onto those memories with everything he had, because they were the one thing his grandmother could never take away. Hours had passed, or maybe days, Virgil couldn't tell anymore. The room never changed. The lights never went off. The machines never stopped humming. His breathing was slow and uneven. Every muscle in his body ached. His hoodie was ripped in several places, and dried stains marked the fabric. Purple bruises spread across his arms and shoulders where the restraints had dug into his skin. His wrists were raw from struggling against the metal cuffs. He barely had the strength to lift his head. The steel door creaked open. His grandmother stepped inside with two assistants carrying another machine. She smiled. Good. You're still conscious. Virgil looked up through tired eyes. Go to hell, she chuckled. He's still defiant. I expected nothing less. One of the assistants adjusted the restraints while the other prepared the equipment. Virgil tried to pull away. His body refused to cooperate. He was exhausted. His grandmother looked down at him. Even fighting this entire time. Virgil managed a weak laugh. Yeah, and I'm not stopping. She nodded as if she respected the answer. We'll see. The machine powered on with a low hum. Virgil squeezed his eyes shut. His breathing became ragged. The strain pushed him to his limit. He gritted his teeth and refused to cry out. Minutes later, the machine powered down. Silence filled the room. Virgil hung limply against the restraints. His hair clung to his face with sweat. Dark circles had formed beneath his eyes. His lips trembled as he struggled to catch his breath. The assistants exchanged uneasy glances. One quietly whispered, he's still holding on. His grandmother wrote another note. His willpower is extraordinary. Virgil forced his eyes open. I'll never, he paused, fighting for breath, break me. She stared at him for several seconds, then she smiled. We'll continue tomorrow. She turned toward the door. As it shut behind her, the room fell silent once again. Virgil let his head rest against the cold steel. His body was worn down. His strength was fading, but somewhere beneath the pain, a tiny spark remained. He thought about William, Christopher, Mike, Elizabeth, Trey, and for the first time since waking up in the laboratory, he smiled. So long as they're safe, I can keep fighting. Outside the room, his grandmother watched him through a thick glass window. She folded her arms. Interesting. No matter what we do, he still refuses to give up. One of the assistants spoke quietly. What if he never breaks? The old woman smiled without taking her eyes off Virgil. Then we'll simply have to change our methods. The lights inside the laboratory dimmed. Virgil closed his eyes. Tomorrow would be another battle, and he intended to survive it. Chapter 4, 3 weeks later. 3 weeks, 21 days, 504 hours. That was how long Virgil Martin had been missing. No ransom note, no phone call, no witnesses who could identify the kidnappers, nothing. The police had searched abandoned buildings, forests, warehouses, and every road leading out of town. Every search ended the same way, empty-handed. The Martin house had changed. It was quieter than anyone could remember. William sat at the kitchen table every morning with 2 cups of coffee, one for himself, one for Virgil. He never poured the second cup out. He just let it grow cold. Every single day, Christopher walked into the kitchen holding Virgil's sketchbook. Dad, William looked up. Yeah, buddy, when's big brother coming home? William's heart broke. He forced a smile. I don't know. Christopher looked down. I miss him. William stood and hugged the little boy tightly. So do I. Mike barely spoke anymore. He kept replaying their last conversation in his head. You're weak, Mike. Too easy. Okay, big bro. He would have given anything to hear Virgil tease him one more time. Instead, all he had was silence. Trey sat alone on the front porch for the first time in years. He regretted every argument he'd ever had with Virgil. He stared at the empty driveway. Come home, dumbass. Rosalie hadn't stopped fake crying. Every night she left the porch light on. Every morning she checked Virgil's room. His bed remained untouched. His drawings were still scattered across his desk. Everything was exactly the way he'd left it, across town. Dinsilla couldn't stop thinking about what she had witnessed. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the black van, she heard Virgil yelling, she remembered reaching for him, and failing, she hadn't told her friends everything, not because she didn't trust them, because she blamed herself. If I had grabbed him, if I'd screamed sooner, if I'd done something, she stopped herself. None of those thoughts brought him back. At dinner that night, Colleen looked around the table. Eat. No one moved. Dinsilla quietly pushed her food around her plate. Greg noticed. What's the problem now? She looked up. It's been 3 weeks. Greg sighed. So, no one's found Virgil. Greg shrugged. Not our concern. Dinsilla slammed her fork onto the table. How can you keep saying that? He was kidnapped. He's 19 years old. He's a human being. Greg stood, and he's a Martin. The room fell silent. Dinsilla stood too. I don't care what his last name is. He didn't deserve what happened to him. Greg pointed toward the stairs. Go to your room. No, his eyes narrowed. What did you say? I said no, for the first time in her life. She refused to back down. If our family won't help someone because of an old grudge, then maybe we're the ones who are wrong. Greg's face hardened. Enough. Dinsilla turned away. Tears filled her eyes. I hope he's alive. She quietly walked upstairs. No one stopped her miles away, deep beneath an abandoned estate. Virgil slowly opened his eyes. The room was just as cold as before. The same concrete walls, the same humming machines, the same heavy chains. He had lost track of time. His face looked pale. His clothes were torn. He had grown thinner. Even lifting his head took effort. He stared at the ceiling. Dad? His voice was barely a whisper. I'm trying. I really am. He closed his eyes. Somewhere above him, life continued. People laughed, people went to school, people walked home with their families. No one knew he was still alive, no one, except the woman who had taken him. From behind a reinforced observation window, his grandmother watched him silently. She smiled to herself. They've stopped looking in the right places. She closed the folder labeled Subject VM, Experiment Log. Good, that gives us more time. The heavy steel door locked with a loud click. Virgil remained alone in the darkness, still waiting, still hoping, still refusing to give up. 3 weeks, Virgil had learned one thing: no prison was perfect. Every morning, the guards followed the same routine. The lights came on at 6. Breakfast arrived at 6:30. The scientists checked the machines. His grandmother reviewed her notes. Then everyone left for exactly 15 minutes while another team prepared the next room. Every single day, Virgil watched, he listened. He counted every footstep, every lock, every camera, every guard. They thought he was too exhausted to notice. They were wrong. One afternoon, as the assistants finished another round of testing, Virgil let his head fall to one side. His breathing became slow and shallow. His body went completely limp. One assistant looked over. I think he's passed out. The other checked his pulse. It's weak, his grandmother frowned. He won't be going anywhere. She looked at the restraints one last time before turning toward the door. Leave him, we'll continue later. The heavy steel door slammed shut. Silence. Virgil waited. 5 seconds, 10, 30, 1 minute. He slowly opened one eye. Now. During the past 3 weeks, one of the bolts holding the restraint to the table had slowly loosened, not by accident. Every night, Virgil had worked it back and forth with the edge of a broken screw he had hidden beneath the mattress. Tonight, it finally came free. He slipped one hand out, then the other. His legs trembled as he stood for the first time in weeks. He nearly collapsed. No, he grabbed the table to steady himself. You didn't survive all this, just to die here. He staggered across the room. A key ring hung beside the exit. His hands shook as he unlocked the door. The hallway stretched ahead of him, empty. He took one slow step, then another. Every movement hurt, every breath burned, but he kept going. A red warning light flashed at the end of the corridor. Someone was coming. Virgil ducked into a storage room and held his breath. 2 guards walked past, arguing about paperwork. Neither of them looked inside. As soon as they disappeared around the corner, Virgil slipped out and kept moving. At the end of the hallway, he found an emergency exit. He pushed. Nothing. Locked. He searched frantically. Then he spotted a red lever marked Emergency Release. Please work. He pulled it. Sirens exploded throughout the building. Red lights flashed. Doors unlocked automatically. Virgil shoved the exit open. Cold night air rushed across his face. For the first time in 3 weeks. He was outside. He didn't stop. He ran. Branches scratched at his arms as he stumbled through the woods. He had no idea where he was. He only knew one thing. He couldn't let them catch him again. His legs felt like they were made of stone. His vision blurred. Still. He kept moving. After nearly an hour, he reached the edge of a lonely country road. His knees gave out. He collapsed beside the ditch. Dad. He whispered, trying. Headlights appeared in the distance. A pickup truck slowed to a stop. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Kid. Virgil tried to lift his head. Everything spun. The man hurried over. Easy. What happened to you? Virgil tried to answer. Only a whisper came out. Help. The man removed his jacket and gently wrapped it around Virgil's shoulders. You're freezing. He helped the young man into the truck. You'll be all right. Virgil's eyes slowly drifted shut. Thank you. The man drove in silence. A few minutes later, they pulled into a familiar driveway. The front porch light flicked on. Monica opened the front door. Greg, she stopped when she saw the young man. Oh my goodness. What happened to him? I found him on the side of the road. Greg helped Virgil inside. We need warm water, clean clothes, and something to eat. Monica nodded immediately. I'll get everything ready. Greg carefully helped Virgil sit on a chair near the fireplace. He soaked a washcloth in warm water and gently wiped the dirt from the young man's face. As more of his face became visible, Greg stopped. His eyes widened. No, he looked closer. It can't be. The missing person posters, the school photo. The name everyone in town had been talking about. Greg whispered under his breath. Virgil Martin. For a long moment, neither Greg nor Monica spoke. Greg remembered every hateful word he'd ever said about the Martins, every warning, every grudge. Then he looked at the frightened 19-year-old sitting in front of him. Virgil wasn't threatening anyone. He wasn't fighting. He was exhausted, cold, hungry, and terrified. Greg quietly sighed. The feud can wait. He pulled another blanket over Virgil's shoulders. Right now, you're safe. Virgil looked up through tired eyes. Why are you helping me? Greg didn't have an answer. Not yet. All he knew was that, for the first time in years, he couldn't see an enemy. He only saw a young man who needed someone to care. Chapter 5, Safe at Last. Morning sunlight slipped through the hospital blinds. The room was quiet except for the steady beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor. Virgil slowly opened his eyes. Everything felt blurry, the white ceiling, the soft hum of the air conditioner, the smell of disinfectant. Where am I? He whispered. His throat felt dry. He tried to sit up. A sharp ache ran through his body. He let out a quiet groan and laid back down. The hospital room door opened. A nurse smiled as she stepped inside. Good morning. I see you're finally awake. Virgil looked at her with tired eyes. How long? You've been asleep for almost 2 days. His eyes widened. 2 days, she nodded. Your body was completely exhausted. You were severely dehydrated, hadn't eaten properly in weeks, and you pushed yourself far beyond your limits. Virgil looked down at the blanket covering him. So, I'm alive. The nurse smiled gently. Yes, and you're safe. For the first time in weeks. Virgil felt his body relax. A few moments later, there was another knock. Greg slowly stepped into the room. He looked uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure if he should even be there. Virgil looked up. Mr. Colleen. Greg gave a small nod. Morning. An awkward silence filled the room. Finally, Greg spoke. The doctor said you'd wake up today. Virgil looked out the window. Thank you. Greg frowned. For what? For stopping. You could have driven past me. Greg sighed. I almost did. Virgil looked at him. Greg rubbed the back of his neck. I spent years telling myself every Martin was my enemy. He looked down at the floor. But when I saw you, you weren't Martin. You were just a kid who needed help. Virgil gave a weak smile. 19. Greg smirked. You're still a kid to me. For the first time since they met. Both of them laughed. It didn't last long, but it was enough. Later that afternoon, the doctor entered the room carrying a clipboard. Good afternoon, Virgil. How are you feeling? Virgil shrugged. Tired. That's expected. The doctor checked his heartbeat before smiling. The good news is that your heart is strong. Your body is recovering, but you'll need plenty of rest. Virgil nodded. Can I go home? The doctor shook his head. Not yet. I'd like to keep you here for a few more days. Virgil sighed. I figured. The doctor smiled. Your family has been looking for you. Virgil's eyes immediately filled with tears. Dad, the doctor nodded. The police never stopped searching. They'll be notified that you've been found. Virgil quickly shook his head. No, the doctor looked surprised. Virgil looked toward Greg. Can I wait? Greg frowned. Why? Virgil swallowed hard. I don't want my little brother seeing me like this. I don't want Christopher to be scared. Greg could hear the pain in his voice. I want a chance to clean up first. Greg nodded slowly. I understand. That evening, the room grew quiet again. Greg stood by the window. Virgil stared at the ceiling. After several minutes, Virgil finally asked the question that had been bothering him. Why do you hate my dad? Greg didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled up a chair, sat down and sighed. It's complicated. Virgil looked at him. You got time. Greg smiled sadly. When your father and I were kids, we were best friends. Virgil's eyes widened. What? Greg nodded. We did everything together. I trusted him more than anyone. So what happened? Greg looked out the window. One day, he disappeared. No goodbye, no explanation. I thought he'd abandoned me. Virgil frowned. My dad never talks about you. I know. Greg's voice was quiet. I stopped talking about him too. Another long silence filled the room. Finally, Virgil spoke. Maybe neither of you knows the whole story. Greg looked over. For the first time in years, he wondered if Virgil was right. Late that night, Virgil couldn't sleep. Rain tapped softly against the hospital window. He watched the drops race down the glass. His thoughts drifted to home, to William, to Rosalie, to Mike, to Trey, to Elizabeth, to Christopher. I miss you guys. He closed his eyes. I'll be home soon. Outside the room, Greg quietly closed the door after checking on him one last time. He looked back through the small window. Virgil had already fallen asleep. Greg folded his arms. Been wrong before? He whispered to himself. Maybe I've been wrong about the Martins too. As the hallway lights dimmed for the night, Greg made a decision. Tomorrow, he was going to call William Martin, no matter how difficult that conversation would be. The Martin house had fallen into its usual silence. No television, no music, no laughter. Only the ticking of the old clock hanging on the living room wall. William sat at the kitchen table staring at a picture of Virgil. His coffee had gone cold hours ago. He didn't notice. He hadn't noticed much of anything since Virgil disappeared. Christopher walked into the kitchen, carrying one of Virgil's old hoodies. He hugged it tightly. Dad. William looked up. Yeah, buddy. Christopher lowered his head. Do you think Big Brother forgot about us? William's heart shattered. He stood up and wrapped Christopher in a hug. No, he could never forget you. Then, why isn't he coming home? William couldn't answer. Instead, he kissed Christopher's forehead. I don't know, but I know your brother. If he's alive, he's fighting his way back to us. Christopher nodded. I miss him. So do I. Across the room, Mike sat quietly on the couch. He wasn't playing video games. He wasn't watching television. He was just staring at the front door. Trey noticed. You've been looking at that door for an hour. Mike shrugged. Maybe he'll walk through it. Trey looked away. Yeah, maybe. Rosalie quietly wiped away another fake tear as she folded laundry. She hadn't touched Virgil's room. No one had. It still smelled like his cologne. His sketchbooks were still stacked on his desk. His guitar rested in the corner, waiting for him. Suddenly, ring, the house phone echoed through the kitchen. Everyone looked at it. William frowned. No one calls the house anymore. He slowly picked it up. Hello, a calm voice answered. Good afternoon. May I speak with Mr. William Martin? This is William. My name is Sarah. I'm calling from St. Mary's Hospital. William's grip tightened on the phone. Okay, we're calling because... She paused for a moment. We have your son here. William froze. His heart stopped. What? We have your son, Virgil Martin. He was admitted 2 days ago. He is alive. The phone slipped from William's hand. It hit the floor with a loud clack. Everyone jumped. Dad, Mike stood up. What happened? William couldn't breathe. His eyes filled with tears. Rosalie hurried over. Will, his lips trembled. He couldn't finish. Rose gently grabbed his shoulders. William, what happened? He finally looked at her. They found him. Silence. They found Virgil. Rosalie covered her mouth. Fake tears immediately streamed down her face. Oh my God. Christopher looked between them. Big brother, William nodded, crying openly now. He's alive. Christopher screamed with excitement. Big brother's alive. He threw his little arms around. William, I told you you'd come home. Mike quickly grabbed the phone from the floor. Hello? The nurse smiled on the other end. Hello, is this another family member? Yeah, I'm his little brother. Is. Mike swallowed hard. Is he okay? He's stable. He's awake. He has a long recovery ahead of him, but the doctors expect him to make a full recovery. Mike burst into tears. Thank you. Thank you so much. Trey quietly turned away from everyone. He covered his face with both hands. No one saw the tears running down his cheeks. Thank God. Rosalie quickly grabbed William's car keys. What are we waiting for? William nodded. Let's go. Christopher ran toward the front door. I'm gonna hug him first. Mike laughed through his tears. No way. I called the hospital, so I get first hug. Christopher crossed his arms. That's not fair. Trey chuckled for the first time in weeks. We'll all hug him. William looked at his children. For the first time in 23 days, he saw hope, real hope. He smiled. Come on, our boy's waiting. St. Mary's Hospital. Virgil sat quietly in his hospital bed looking out the window. The afternoon sun warmed the room. Greg stood beside the door. They know. Virgil slowly looked over. My family? Greg nodded. The hospital called them. Virgil's heart started pounding. They're coming. Virgil suddenly felt nervous. What if? Greg tilted his head. What if what? Virgil looked down at his hands. What if they don't recognize me? Greg walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. William would recognize his son anywhere. So will the rest of your family. A quiet knock came from the hallway. Footsteps. Voices. Christopher's excited laugh echoed through the corridor. Virgil's eyes filled with tears. They're here. His heart raced faster than it ever had before. After 23 days, the Martin family was finally about to be together again. Chapter 6. Welcome home. The hallway outside Virgil's hospital room felt endless. William stood outside the door with one hand on the handle, his hands shook. For 23 days, he had imagined this moment. Sometimes Virgil came home smiling. Sometimes, he never came home at all now. His son was only a few feet away. William took a deep breath. Ready. No one answered. No one needed to. He slowly pushed the door open. The room was quiet. Virgil looked toward the doorway for a moment. Nobody moved. William's eyes filled with tears. Virgil looked thinner than he remembered. His dark hair had grown messy. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes. His face looked exhausted. But none of that mattered. Because he was alive. Dad, William broke. He rushed across the room and wrapped both arms around his oldest son. Oh my God, my boy, my boy. Virgil hugged him back as tightly as he could. I'm sorry. William immediately pulled back. No, he placed both hands on Virgil's face. You never apologize for surviving. You hear me. Virgil couldn't stop crying. I tried to come home. I really did. William hugged him again. I know, son. You came back. That's all that matters. Christopher had been trying his hardest to wait his turn. He couldn't anymore. Big brother. He ran across the room as fast as his little legs could carry him. Virgil laughed through his tears. There he is. Christopher climbed right onto the hospital bed and threw his arms around Virgil's neck. I missed you. I missed you so much. Virgil buried his face in Christopher's shoulder. I missed you too, buddy. Christopher sniffled. I prayed every night. I asked God to bring you home. Virgil kissed the top of his little brother's head. I guess he listened. Christopher smiled through his tears. I knew you weren't gonna leave me. Mike stood near the doorway for once. He didn't know what to say. Virgil looked over. Come here. Mike walked over slowly. The second he reached the bed, Virgil pulled him into a hug. Mike finally broke down crying. I'm sorry. Virgil frowned. For what? I told you to mess with Dad's coffee. Virgil blinked then. He laughed, a real laugh when he hadn't heard from himself in weeks. That's what you've been worried about, Mike nodded. I thought. What if that was the last thing we ever did together? Virgil smiled. It was worth it. Mike laughed. Dad still brings it up. William rolled his eyes. It was good coffee. Everyone laughed for the first time in weeks. The room didn't feel heavy. Trey stayed near the window, hands in his pockets, looking everywhere except at Virgil. Virgil noticed. Trey, no answer. You gonna come over here? Trey slowly turned around. I don't know. Why? Trey looked down. I was a jerk. I said a lot of messed up things. Virgil smiled softly. So did I. Trey walked over. I'm sorry. Virgil didn't answer. He simply opened his arms. Trey immediately hugged his older brother. I'm really glad you're alive. Virgil closed his eyes. I'm glad I made it back. Elizabeth had been hiding behind Rosalie the whole time. She quietly walked over. Hi, Virgil smiled. Hi, Lizzie. She climbed onto the bed beside Christopher. I made you a picture. She handed him a folded piece of paper. Virgil slowly opened it. It showed their entire family standing together. Everyone was smiling. At the top, she had written in colorful crayon. Welcome home, big brother. Virgil couldn't stop the tears. It's beautiful. Elizabeth smiled proudly. I knew you'd come back. Rosalie finally stepped forward. She gently placed a hand on Virgil's cheek. You scared me. Virgil lowered his eyes. I'm sorry. She immediately shook her head. No. She wrapped him in a careful hug. You don't apologize either. I've been waiting to do this for 23 days. Virgil rested his head on her shoulder. I missed you, Mom. Rosalie smiled. I missed you too. A quiet knock interrupted the reunion. Everyone looked toward the doorway. Greg Colleen stood there awkwardly. William's smile disappeared. The room fell silent. Neither man spoke. Years of anger stood between them. Greg finally cleared his throat. He looked at Virgil. I figured I'd make sure he was okay. William stared at him. You brought him here? Greg nodded. I found him collapsed on the side of the road. Another silence. William slowly walked toward him. Greg expected a punch instead. William wrapped him in a hug. Greg froze. William's voice cracked. You saved my son. Greg slowly hugged him back. I'm sorry, for everything. William closed his eyes. We've got a lot to talk about. Greg nodded. Yes, we do. Virgil watched them from his hospital bed. For years, he had only known hate between the two men. Now, for the first time, he saw hope. Maybe, just maybe. The feud that had destroyed two families was finally beginning to heal. As the evening sun poured through the hospital window, the Martin family stood together once again. And for the first time in a long time, Virgil truly felt like he was home. The laughter inside the hospital room slowly faded. Christopher was showing Virgil another drawing. Elizabeth sat beside the bed smiling. Mike and Trey were arguing over who would get to help push Virgil's wheelchair when he was discharged. William shook his head and laughed. You two are unbelievable. Virgil smiled. It felt normal for the first time in a long time. Then knock, knock. The room became quiet. Come in, William said. The door slowly opened. An elderly woman stepped inside carrying a bouquet of white lilies. She wore a warm smile. Oh. There he is, my poor grandson. The instant Virgil saw her, every bit of color drained from his face, his breathing stopped, his hands began shaking. He couldn't speak. The flowers slipped slightly in the woman's hands as she hurried toward the bed. Oh, sweetheart, I heard what happened. Eben so worried about you. She reached out as if she were going to touch his shoulder. Virgil flinched so hard that he nearly pulled away from the bed. Don't. His voice barely came out. The room fell silent. William looked between them. Virgil, the old woman smiled sadly. Oh, he's probably just overwhelmed. I can't imagine everything he has been through. She looked at Virgil with gentle eyes. Only Virgil noticed the tiny smile that disappeared the moment everyone else looked away. His stomach twisted. She's lying. She did this. His heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear the conversation around him. Rosalie walked over with a grateful smile. I'm so glad you came. The older woman sighed dramatically. Family has to be here for one another. Rosalie nodded. I couldn't agree more. She reached into her purse. I was actually hoping you could do me a favor. The grandmother tilted her head. Oh. Rosalie pulled out 3 $100 bills. There are a few things Virgil needs before he comes home. Some comfortable clothes, a sketchbook, and a few other things the doctors recommended. She gently placed the money into the older woman's hand. Could you pick them up for us? We've been so busy staying here with him. The grandmother smiled warmly. Of course. Be happy to. She tucked the money into her purse. Anything for my grandson. Virgil's eyes widened. He wanted to scream. Don't trust her, please. Don't trust her. But the words refused to come. William smiled. Thank you. She gave a small nod. No need to thank me. She looked back at Virgil. I'll come visit again soon. This time, the smile she gave him lasted just a second too long. Only he noticed it. Only he understood what it meant. You escaped once. But I can always find you again. A chill ran through Virgil's entire body. His hands trembled beneath the hospital blanket. The grandmother turned and walked out of the room. The door clicked shut. Silence. Rosalie looked over at Virgil. Honey, you look like you've seen a ghost. Virgil stared at the closed door. His voice was barely a whisper. She was the one. William frowned. The one who what? Virgil slowly turned toward his family. Tears filled his eyes. The one who took me. The smiles disappeared from every face in the room.